21st century own party approval rating, about at this point in the second term. We got Trump, we got Obama, we got Bush. Look, they're all fairly popular, but the one who is the most popular, and we have seen this time in and time out, no matter when you look, is Donald John Trump. He's the only one who's over 80%. 83% of Republicans still approve of the job that Donald Trump is doing as president. He still has that magic touch. We'll see if it carries over to South Carolina, but we've seen it in primaries this year, Senate primaries, and that's because he is still a very popular man, historically popular when it comes to his own party liking and approving of the job that he's doing.
So, well, if we could all bring the energy to our job that Harry Hanson does to report on favorable polls to Donald Trump and the Republicans on CNN, I think we'd be all much, much better off. 83% approval for President Trump within his own party. You would think that that would bear fruit in the midterms, but there are still affordability concerns that Americans have. And the Iran conflict continues to loom over everything that we're doing. How will Donald Trump get the Republicans across the finish line come November in the midterms? Let's ask our friend Kayleigh McEnany, who also brings a great amount of energy to her job, host of Saturday in America with Kayleigh McEnany and co-host of Outnumbered on Fox. Kayleigh, thanks for being with us today. It's good to have you back.
Hi, Annie. Great to join you.
So can you talk to me a little bit about where you are feeling? It's July, November, the midterms are definitely a part of the conversation right now. I've been watching the Fox News polls that have come out, the power rankings and everything. We're getting to that point. Do you feel optimistic at all about November and the Republicans being able to retain majorities?
Well, we know historically that when the president is in the White House of one party, his party tends to do fairly poorly in the midterm elections. It's the way history is. But if of any cycle, I am most confident that this cycle could defy the arc of history. And I say that because of the Republicans' really heroic work with redistricting efforts. And Democrats have been redistricting for years. And Republicans decided to play catch up this cycle. And in doing so, they have, forged the way to have a strategic advantage. And when you look, what that would mean in terms of politics and polling is that Democrats would have to overperform by about 3 to 4 percentage points to make up for the way the maps have been redrawn. And then when you compare that to the generic ballot, what you see is Democrats in 2018, where they did fairly well. President Trump was in the White House then. Democrats had a plus 10 generic polling advantage. Currently, according to the Washington Post, they are at plus 3. So when you add together redistricting plus Democrats not doing so well in the polls, comparatively speaking, I think it does look good for Republicans. But what Democrats have on their side is an enthusiasm edge. Democrats are far more enthusiastic going into the midterms, which you would suspect. Republicans already have the White House. It tends to deflate things. And also, when you look at who is certain to vote, Democrats have an edge among those certain to vote. So in order to defy history, a lot has to be done. But at the same time, there are some structural advantages that Republicans have that they didn't have in 2018.
Kayleigh McEnany speaking with us right now. I mean, I always ask myself, like, what are the Democrats offering as an alternative for the problems that we all kind of, on the whole, agree on? Maybe affordability is one of those things. I think safety and security and of our communities, but also of our country from a border standpoint, is something that we seem to largely agree upon. For all the elections for the last 10 years or so, it's really been about Donald Trump. Are the Democrats looking to offer something other than vote for us because we're not for Trump coming this midterm election?
No, I don't think that they do. In fact, when you look at that same poll I was mentioning, the Washington Post one, what you find is that Republicans still have a 1-point overall advantage on the issues. When asked the question, which political party do you agree with more? Republicans had a 1-point advantage. And I think you see this on issue by issue where Democrats continue to shoot themselves in the foot, for lack of a better word, because when you look at transgender issues, this is something Republicans had great success with. 80% of people don't think biological men should be competing in women's sports. President Trump really honed in on this cultural wedge issue, and it did him a lot of favors. In fact, Kamala Harris's polling showed that it shifted 2 percentage points towards President Trump. But yet you still have Democrats leaning into this woke cultural agenda. In education, you see it, forcing these ideas upon our children, taking yourself outside of the cultural realm. When you look at, the economic policies of President Trump, you get Trump accounts. When you look at Democrats, you get democratic socialism. Socialism has, of course, failed in Venezuela and Cuba, but this is where Democrats are going. So even though the tailwind's at their back in terms of the cycle that we are in, they're not providing much in the way of constructive ideas outside of this very loud and pronounced democratic socialist platform, which the majority of the country rejects.
We're speaking with Kayleigh McEnany, co-host of Outnumbered on Fox and a must-watch show on Saturdays on Fox News, Saturday in America with Kayleigh McEnany, also author of the book Serenity in the Storm, which is a great read. Kayleigh, if we're looking at what the Democrats are offering, which is primarily not Trump, but also you can't, negate the idea that maybe socialism, a little, democratic socialism, if you will, is where the Democrat Party needs to go. There's a fracture happening right now in the Democratic Party. The Republicans, there's probably quite a few differing opinions within the big tent party that the Republicans are currently. But I do think that they have to make sure they lock in on messaging and affordability and a reminder that as the second that the Democrats get the reins of governmental power, they take it right into the abyss of overspending, expansion of government. It's very anti-American in the way that they lead in government. Do you think the Republicans are doing a good job messaging going into the midterm so far?
I think focusing on democratic socialism without question. Obviously the Iran war is going on. There's a lot of other storylines that are taking the headlines, but I think President Trump, as he gets out on the trail, he's going to Georgia tonight. There's 103 days left. When he has these opportunities to be out on the trail, no one has a bigger megaphone than him. And the message needs to be crystal clear. The threat that democratic socialists pose to our country and the fact that the Democrats are embracing this part of their party. You have the lone voices like James Carville, Henry Cuellar, John Fetterman, Dan Jones, all of these folks who I've had conversations with who are saying, we reject democratic socialists, but those are the lone voices. Where is Hakeem Jeffries? Where is Chuck Schumer? I think there needs to be a re-education when it comes to socialism, a reminder of why it's failed. And the only person that can really do that is President Trump. I think we'll start to hear that message come from him, but it needs to be on repeat over and over and over and over, because that to me is the winning message. Democrats are offering you crazy. We are offering you common sense. Don't let them regain power, or else you can say goodbye to capitalism, to the country you love, to the values we hold dear.
Yeah, as a main tenet from those socialists that are infiltrating and taking over the Democrat Party, capitalism is the main problem that we have here in this country, according to them. Also, from a common sense standpoint, and President Trump really does articulate this quite a bit. We're talking a lot today on this show specifically about biological men playing in girls' sports. And Sophie Cunningham, who is a Mizzou grad, we claim her here in Missouri proudly, has come out and resurfaced a 2022 tweet that she put out regarding Leah Thomas, who was competing against Riley Gaines and saying, this is ridiculous. We can't do this. But she came back and said here in 2026 that she doesn't hate anybody, that she believes in love, but she says you can't have love without truth. And I'm just thinking, gosh, that's so simply put by Sophie Cunningham, a player in the WNBA. That's common sense stuff. It doesn't even need to be red versus blue.
Oh, for sure. And, I love the way she framed it, like you said, about love versus hate. This isn't about hating anyone. We believe in loving everyone, certainly if you're a Christian, and the way Sophie Cunningham is, but we also believe, to her point, in truth. And the way to love, half of the biological population, women, is to fight for young women, to give them a fair spot in women's sports, to allow them to compete on this even playing field, and to speak truth about the clarity of gender. There is male, there is female, and that is what she's doing. And she's doing it in a place where it's the WNBA. This is not a place that's too friendly to people with alternative viewpoints, or even people who are silent. Heck, you look what happens to Caitlin Clark. She hasn't said a word about politics, and she's getting pummeled there on the court. We've also covered that story.
Literally.
But for Sophie Cunningham, yes, to speak up in the way that she is and be so vocal on an issue that isn't political, but really common sense, it is an act of courage. But at the same time, the WNBA might not welcome her view, but 80% of the country does. That is a number that agrees that biological men should not be playing in women's sports. So she finds herself in a comfortable majority.
Common sense. The more we say it out loud, the more common it will be. Once again, Kayleigh McEnany, thank you for the time today. We're grateful for you. We love watching your Saturday show. And of course, we catch you each day on Outnumbered. We appreciate your time this afternoon.
Thanks, Annie. Always great to join you.
Take care. Bye-bye.